Every once in a while, you'll play a game that really surprises you. Maybe it's a game you had low expectations for, or maybe it's a game you just didn't know much about going in. Whatever the case, some games just have a funny way of being more than what you thought they'd be. Enter Prey, a first-person sci-fi adventure in space with some survival and horror elements mixed in. It was developed by Arcane Studios, who created Arx Fatalis, the Dishonored series, and the upcoming game Deathloop. The game reviewed fairly well when it was released back in 2017, but it never ended up selling that many copies. It's become one of those hidden gems that never really got the attention it deserved back when it first launched. Because I had almost no expectations, I was very surprised by how much I ended up enjoying this game. I found myself continually impressed with everything Prey has to offer, from the story, to the gameplay, to the beautifully detailed environments. It's a game that prides itself on subverting your expectations and challenging you to think differently. You're encouraged to be creative in your problem solving and rewarded for your exploration and curiosity. And this is all done within the confines of an alien-infested space station. Prey is honestly unlike any game I've played before, and it's one I can see myself playing for years to come due to its replayability. What I want to do in this video is walk you through the basics of Prey and tell you why I think it's a game you should consider playing.
We're gonna shake things up, Morgan. Like old times.
Prey takes place in the year 2035 aboard the space station Talos 1. The station has been overrun by a shadowy group of aliens known as the Typhon, who possess a wide range of supernatural abilities including shapeshifting and telekinesis. Talos 1 was essentially built to study these aliens, but unfortunately something happened that caused them to break free. This leads to widespread death and destruction as the Typhon tear through the facility and eliminate anyone in their path. You play as Morgan Yu, the brother or sister of the station's director, Alex Yu. The game has you make your way through the different sections of Talos 1 in an effort to find a way to destroy the Typhon. Along the way, you'll learn more about Talos 1, the Typhon, and the people working on the station. I would describe the tone of this game as very eerie and unnerving. While I would not call Prey a horror game, it definitely has some horror elements in it. You will journey through abandoned hallways and rooms filled with dead bodies, flickering lights, and any number of different hazards. The music can be very creepy, even haunting at times, adding to the tenseness of your exploration. The Typhon also make for a very unsettling enemy, with shapeshifting mimics constantly keeping you on your toes and zigzagging phantoms making you run for cover. There are numerous reprieves from this tone over the course of the game where the intensity is dialed back significantly, but I definitely think it characterizes a large portion of this game. This tone is offset, in my opinion, by the information you uncover about the people working on Talos 1. One of the really cool things about this game's setting, at least for me, is that it involves a typical work environment in space. The people who work on the station aren't going back to their families at the end of the workday, they're stationed up in Talos 1 for months at a time. As a result, the facility is outfitted with a bunch of amenities to help keep people sane while they're up there. You have living spaces, recreational areas, exercise equipment, medical facilities, they even have a psychiatrist to help employees cope with extended time in space. This all adds to the feeling of a bustling and active facility, which makes the isolation you experience for most of the game that much more imposing. You'll learn about the people who work on Talos 1 over the course of the game through a series of audio recordings, scattered notes, and emails. These help with the world building because it helps you understand more about where you are and what life was actually like before the Typhon escaped. Things like work relationships, secrets, personal relationships, how people passed the time when they weren't working, how some people passed the time when they were working. It all helps build out this nice image of life on Talos 1, an image that contrasts with the haunting gloom that accompanies your exploration. This background information also tells you more about yourself and the history of Talos 1. The station has a very interesting history that involves alternate versions of real-life events, such as John F. Kennedy surviving the attempt on his life. It all sort of ties into how the Typhon were discovered in the first place and how Transtar, the company currently running Talos 1, got to where they are. You'll learn about some of the work Transtar performed on the station and decide for yourself if what they did was justified or not. While the story, tone, and background information are a big part of Prey's identity, they only represent half the game. The other half involves the combat, exploration, and problem solving, all of which I think are well designed. The game does a great job of giving you the freedom to approach each of these systems in your own way. For instance, combat can be approached in one of three ways. You can fight the enemy head on, take them out stealthily, or just sneak past them altogether. You're given the tools and the skills to pursue any of these methods, but it's up to you to decide how you want to approach combat. Similarly, the freedom you're given to explore allows you to progress through the game in a few different ways. For example, you may come across a door that requires requires a key card or a code to get past. You can search for these items or look for a way around the door, such as a maintenance hatch. If the door requires a code and you've invested in the hacking ability, you could choose to hack your way through the door instead. The point is, Prey is designed to have multiple solutions to the same problem, and you're given the option to pursue whichever solution you prefer. When fighting the Typhon and the other threats of Talos 1, you have a few different weapons and abilities to choose from, including but not limited to a wrench, a silenced pistol, and a shotgun. Ammo for these weapons is very scarce, so you need to scavenge some from around the station or make some using the fabricator, which I'll get to a little later. In addition to the weapons you'll find, you also have the option to acquire the supernatural abilities of the Typhon. These range from shapeshifting to phasing to several different energy blasts. Basically, if the Typhon can do it, so can you, which is a pretty cool feature when you think about it. You'll be able to acquire these powers at some point early on, and it will involve scanning different enemies until you have enough information to copy their abilities. Now, in order to get any ability in this game, supernatural or otherwise, you need something called a neuromod, which is something that TranStar invented. These essentially allow a person to install a specific ability or talent into their brain. For example, you could scan the brain of someone who plays the guitar, create a neuromod out of that scan, then inject that skill into another person, allowing them to play the guitar as well as the person the neuromod is based off of. For the purposes of this game, neuromods essentially function as ability points for the player. They can be found scattered throughout the station and used to acquire a wide range of skills and abilities, including increased health, increased damage, better stealth, hacking and repair abilities, and the Typhon powers I mentioned earlier. You'll want to collect as many of these as possible, not only to make yourself more powerful, but also to give yourself more gameplay options to work with. Neuromods are just one of many items you'll find scattered throughout Talos 1. There's weapons, ammo, medkits, food, crafting materials, and a lot of junk. A big part of Prey is looting all the rooms you enter and scavenging the materials you need to survive, including and especially the junk. Earlier, I referred to something called a fabricator, which you can see here. A fabricator essentially serves as a 3D printer, where you select a plan to create something, insert the necessary materials, then fire up the machine. The materials you need to create items can technically be found through looting, but there really isn't that much of it just lying around. Most of your materials will come from recycling the junk you find throughout the station. There's another machine called a recycler, which, as the name implies, recycles any items you put into it. While junk is the thing you're going to recycle the most, you can recycle literally any item you can put in your inventory, such as food, spare parts, and even extra weapons you find lying around. This cycle of scavenging items, turning them into materials, then using those materials to create resources is one of Prey's central gameplay elements. During my playthrough, I found myself constantly using the recycler and fabricator to make myself more ammo, which I had trouble finding enough of. It was sometimes annoying having to stop what I was doing to scavenge enough materials to make more ammo, but I eventually found some more efficient ways to gather the materials I needed. Additionally, there are some benefits to all the scavenging you'll be doing. During your searching, you may come across hidden passages, keycards or codes, passwords for computers, or other useful things like weapon upgrade kits and neuromods. The game really encourages you to explore as much as possible, and they make it pretty easy for you to do that. You're allowed to return to any area you've already visited, and you're actually given two different means of traversing the station quickly. About halfway through the game, you'll get access to the lift in the lobby of Talos 1, which will allow you to get to the top or bottom of the station very quickly. You'll also be able to use a series of airlocks to leave the station and get to certain areas faster. You need to open these airlocks from the inside first, so you'll need to keep a lookout for them as you explore. The main quest will take you to pretty much every area on Talos 1, while side quests will often have you backtrack to areas you've already visited. This will give you a chance to search areas that may have been unavailable before, or access things like computers and safes that you may not have had the codes, passwords, or skills to access previously. Some of these side quests will also have an impact on the main story, while others are merely there for background information or for useful items. So why should you consider giving Prey a shot? Well, the freedom this game gives you in nearly every aspect is one of its strongest features. Whether it's combat, problem solving, exploration, or story decisions, you're allowed to approach these things in whatever way you see fit, within the confines of the game of course. Personally, I found the combat to be very enjoyable and versatile, as you have a wide range of skills and abilities to choose from. Every enemy has their own strengths and weaknesses, and learning them will allow you to be more effective in whatever strategy you choose to employ. I will warn you that combat is more difficult than your average game, as many enemies are designed to be more powerful than you for most of your adventure. I played the game on normal and found myself challenged numerous times by different combinations of enemies. It's not Dark Souls level of difficult by any means, but it's certainly not a walk in the park. In terms of the exploration, I think it's really cool how there are multiple ways to reach your objectives. You aren't limited to only one path forward. Instead, you're rewarded for being creative and for just looking around. Like I said before, the game encourages you to explore as much as possible, and they make it pretty easy for you to do just that. Finally, the story is definitely definitely one of the highlights of Prey. I've given you the basic background information for Prey's story, but there's a lot I intentionally left out. Part of why I enjoyed this game so much is because I knew nothing about the story going in. I mentioned at the start of the video that Prey prides itself on subverting your expectations and challenging you to think differently. This is something you should keep in mind as you play through this game. Hopefully this review has at least made you somewhat interested in this game. It really is one of those hidden gems that deserves to be played by more people. Maybe now that Arcane is now part of the Xbox portfolio, it'll see some new life on Game Pass. For now, it remains an underrated game that I strongly encourage you to check out for yourself.